let's now talk about language, context, and discourse, which are very important in understanding any pragmatic meaning and its role in overall critical discourse analysis. Before I move on, let me just talk about one thing first. That context is probably the central figure, or you can say central point, which is equally important in both pragmatics and critical discourse studies. So we rely heavily in our critical discourse analysis that what kind of context is being is there or is being created by the speaker of a certain piece of communication, and what kind of ideological, social, political meanings are generated or regenerated by the creation of such context. So before we move on understanding this concept, we need to know that this is equally important to pragmatics and critical discourse analysis studies. And an understanding of how language functions in context is central to understanding of the relationship between what is said and what is understood in a certain communicative situation. So it is possible, as I have been saying this, that in a certain critical situation or in a certain social situation, we might say something and we might mean something different. So, and that is what or where pragmatics becomes a key component of understanding the meanings. The relationship between language and context is fundamental to pragmatics and as well as to critical discourse analysis. Malinowski in the first part of the previous century has also highlighted the importance of context in understanding the meaning, and he proposed two kinds of context: the context of situation and the context of the culture, overall broader socio-political culture in which a certain message is produced. And he thought understanding of these two cultures is absolutely a key factor in understanding the meaning of a certain communication. And without bringing in these two cultures, we probably would miss some of the points of the meaning in relation to a particular communication. Further, he argues that what the people involved in a text are doing, and if we do not understand their culture and what kind of activities they are involved in a certain situation, we probably would or may miss certain points of key points of understanding there. The linguist John Firth as well as has also proposed certain components of context involving participants, objects, and verbal action. Firth believes that participants are of key importance in a communication, then the verbal action and the objects, maybe physical objects or other objects which are involved in a situation. In other words, that means the immediate situation of a speech or of a conversation, and then the kind of message or verbal action which is being performed. They are key to the understanding of the meaning. Further, Malinowski and Firth both proposed a three-part model of context in which they focused on form, focused on field, tenor, and mode. Field is related to the social action that is taking place through communication. Then tenor, the participants, their roles in that particular communication, and then the mode, the symbolic or rhetorical channel through which that message is being conveyed. It may involve the kind of the language being used and the form in which the language is being used. So these also make, according to some proponents of this theory, these three things also perform the role of context. Further, the context in recent studies have been conceptualized in some other ways also. For example, some people call that there are two kinds of context. Number one is the physical context, and other one is the cotext, which is the textual context. Physical context involves the social, political, cultural context as well as the mental worlds of the speakers or the participants in a communication, because where they belong to mentally at a certain period of time is also very important. For example, if a person is standing somewhere else and thinking about something else, or he's believing something is happening somewhere else, he might be influenced by that his thought process. So the mental worlds are also very important in understanding the context, if we have an access to that. Then social critical cultural understanding of the overall communication, and then the background knowledge of the context. This involves both cultural and interpersonal knowledge, culture of the environment and interpersonal knowledge of the participants who are participating in a certain communication. Their own backgrounds are also very important in digging out the meanings. Then linguistic context involves the co-text, which means when we are reading let's say reading a certain text, there are always certain things said before or after it. So these things which are said before and after it actually makes its co-text. So, and they always help us in understanding the meanings. It might have happened to you many times in your own life that you're reading a text and there comes a word which you do not understand. And what you do is you just read through the lines again and try to understand that the meaning of that particular word by its linguistic context, in other words, by knowing what has been written before or after this. Sometimes you straight away consult dictionary, but sometimes you try this strategy. I do it in most of my readings. So that makes that is actually the co-text, knowing the meaning through the co-text. In overall pragmatic meanings development, this co-text is very important. And it is believed that developing meaning or understanding pragmatic meaning of a statement is a form of collaborative social action in which the words collaborate between themselves, and then they together collaborate with the reader also. Co-text limits the range of possible interpretation. Usually when we do not understand the meaning of a word or we understand the meaning of a word, and we don't place it in a certain context, there is every likelihood that that word may be taken into different interpretations. But if we know the co-text, what has been written before or after it or related to it, that would actually help us to pin down the actual meaning or the real meaning or closer to the real meaning, because that would limitize our possible interpretations. Because we would just cut it down, we'll see कि इस context में ये हो सकता है और ये नहीं हो सकता. By doing this exercise for a moment, we can actually reach somehow what we assume the real meanings or genuine meanings of a text. For example, let's look at the variation of meanings in a certain context and how context may have a serious impact on the generation of meanings. I give you a very simple example. Let's assume two people are communicating with each other in a restaurant. So the meaning of that communication to those two people who are communicating with each other in a restaurant would be different. And the meaning of the same communication to a person sitting next to them in another table and who is by chance listening to them would be different, because he would not know the background knowledge of both participants. He would also may not be able to gauge properly the overall socio-cultural context of those two participants or their professional backgrounds. Similarly, a bystander would understand that conversation in an entirely different way, and then other people who might be eavesdropping just would have heard some part of that communication just passing by, would understand that in an entirely different way. We just look into our own communicative experience. We would relate this example to our own experiences also, because there would be many incidents or evidences in our own life also where we would have probably gone through this experience of misunderstanding or understanding a certain meaning because of knowing the context, or because of lack of the knowledge about the context, our understanding of certain meaning would have hindered. Thomas has also explained that meanings are not inherent or not embedded in words only, rather they need an understanding. Since meaning making is a dynamic process, it needs an understanding of the participants, their roles in a communication, and therefore meanings are negotiated between participants, the situation, and the overall context of the utterance also. Context, in short, and to sum up, can be seen as the controlling structures of social phenomena in general and of language use in a discourse in particular. Context is something which controls the communication and then provides it meaning also. They represent what is relevant in the environment of social action and discourse, and that's how they create and recreate meaning. So, to sum up, we can safely say that the knowledge of a context is very important to understand pragmatic meanings of an utterance or a piece of communication. Similarly, they are equally important to understand the power relations and ideology being transferred, being negotiated in a communication, and which obviously is a key concern of critical discourse analysis.